Welcome to What's in the Box, episodes of horror with Donna and Eric. I'm Donna.
And I'm Eric.
In this episode, we are discussing the classic vampire book, Dracula. Um, Everybody's heard of Dracula, especially if you've heard of vampires. It is touted, I guess, as the first vampire book, which not really. There's another book that was written before it. It was originally published in 1897 by Bram Stoker. So, yeah. Um, so what did you think?
Um, well, I think like you, I want to say this was my first time reading it fully.
Mm, yes,
And
definitely.
I think the well was poisoned a little bit because the story, we already knew the story over and from
Hmm.
all this stuff. Overall, when I went into this, I thought I was going to hate it because I remember trying to read it, I don't know, 5, 10 years ago and being annoyed with the way it's laid out and putting it down. I'm not a huge first person, and the fact that everyone it's basically a series of first person
Right.
diaries and journals and everything.
Yep.
So at the time, I found it frustrating. Now this time though, um, I enjoyed it. You know, I'm gonna I have issues, but overall, it was a good book, and I thought it was well written, and I appreciate um the flow of it and the way he broke it down. And I thought that was kind of cool this time as I'm going through it. Instead of being annoyed by the journal entries, I was more,
Right.
um, I said, okay, this is cool, kind of get a, that jump around perspective kind of thing. The only problem I have is that he needed to cut like
Hmm.
50, 60 pages at the end. I found the whole from the moment, and I think this is where the movies get us. The movies ruin it because in movie time, it's a quick jump. But
Right.
when we go from that point where they basically destroy everything that Dracula has, except for the one coffin, and then he, escapes and goes home, it takes for effing ever. And I'm
Uh-huh.
just like, come on. And the problem I was having is while I was enjoying reading it, and we had a very interesting format because we had an illustrated Dracula with motion, pictures or whatever. I also was doing a ton of things, and so I would listen to it on audiobook to fill in the gap to get to the point where we could actually have the conversation.
Right.
That last half of the audiobook, chapters starting with like chapter 22 through 27, it's just it's all the same. It feels like it's just all kind of bundled together,
It's all planning.
and it's so boring,
Yeah.
and it's so tedious.
Hmm.
And I part of the problem I think I was having was that when you read it, you don't really have accents. The only time I remember them going crazy with the accent was when they talked to the
The
zoo guy.
common people. Yeah. So the zoo guy and then the people in Galatz at
Yeah,
towards the end.
but
Um,
the guy reading it wanted to make sure you knew Van Helsing was,
right.
Dutch or whatever, and he had an accent. And I would love to drive to his house and throw a brick through his window with a note that says "Stop." For the
Yeah.
love of God. But other than that, the guy did a really good job reading it. So I hate saying that, but boy, the accent and the repetition at the end
Hmm.
ruins up to it. Cause I was up until the point where they fight with Dracula and he escapes, he spills the gold out and they figure out his plan and he disappears. It was almost edge of your seat kind of reading, even though you knew what was going to happen because of all the other things. But I guess it was filling in because there's so many things that don't happen in the movies that happen in the book that fill it in. And
Right.
so it was kind of interesting that first 170 pages. But man, the back end, I was a little annoyed. And then
Yeah.
and then chapter 27 is good. It cleans it up and they're there and there's the
Hmm.
conflict and
And that's the end.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
I personally like stories told in journal entries. What's it called? Apostolatory
I don't
version.
know.
I really enjoyed that. So when I started reading I was like, oh, this is really good. I really like, it was a combination of journal entries and there were a few news articles, especially talking about the Demeter when the Demeter came in. Um,
Yeah, I thought that the way he wrote those news articles made no sense because he wrote them as if he was telling a story
mhm,
and
yeah,
not journalistic at all.
right.
And I'm like, well,
Uh,
maybe that's how they wrote stuff in 1897 in the papers, but I
maybe,
don't think so because
yeah,
it was
maybe,
way fantastical. So I wish that would have been drier, but I get what you're saying. Totally
yeah,
understand. And like I said, I appreciated it this time. I just don't like first person, and rarely do I think somebody does it well.
yeah. And for me, I kind of got bogged down after Lucy died the first time.
Yeah,
Because it was like a lot of Van Helsing going back and forth to Amsterdam. It was like every day he was going to Amsterdam.
yeah.
And I'm like, I mean, I'm not good at geography, so I don't know how close London and Amsterdam are. So I can't
I
say
guess a boat trip across the
train,
channel maybe,
something.
and
I
then
don't
jump
know.
on a train. I don't know
Um,
either.
but he was like, oh, he's going back and forth to Amsterdam. And I'm like, okay, like stick around,
Hmm.
what do you have to go back there for?
Yeah, I mean,
And
this is so pressing. This is only the, Prince of Darkness, you
right.
know, hell on earth. If we leave him
Yeah.
unchecked, everybody's going to die, but I'm going to go back and check on whatever I'm checking on,
Yeah. And it's
which,
like, oh, let's have breakfast and then we'll talk about it. It was just a lot of planning
and I'll
that
tell
we
you
were,
that, did that not feel very Victorian to you though?
yeah,
Like we're going to have, I mean,
tea.
even
And
heck,
yeah,
even I did that in Sins. I
yeah,
guess it must be a Victorian thing because it
must
was
be. Yeah.
how it worked out.
I thought some of the things, like you said, 60 or 70 pages at the end could have been cut off, but I don't think at the end. I think throughout the
Oh,
book,
sure,
there could have
sure.
been places. Like towards the end, they were describing that they made sure to get a saddle with a movable horn for Mina if she needed to ride a horse. Like, what did we need to know that?
And I'll be honest, by that time I'm
Checked
trying to
out.
just get
Yeah.
through it. And
Yeah.
so I don't even know if I remember the brief. I know I had to go back and listen to a couple of spots 3 or 4 times before I picked up on it because dogs are going crazy right now. I don't know if you can hear it.
I heard a little
Um,
bit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, we got werewolves downstairs.
They're coming
Um,
for Dracula.
yeah, no, but yeah, but at the beginning, it's forgivable. You're like, well, I'm reading something from forever ago. It's not that bogged down. It's just little sections. But
Yeah.
when you hit chapter 21 to about 26, 25, maybe it's 22 to 25, it's just unnecessary. It's just so much you could have done a little tighter. And again, I think the movies poisoned that well.
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
because we
Absolutely.
were like, get to it, we know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I know we're going to watch 5 of them and kind of compare to see who does a good job of it. And I bet you they all jump cut. I bet you there's
Hmm.
no.
Yeah.
Um,
I was really confused too about the Renfield character. Now, I'm going to preface this with saying all I know about Dracula is what I've read in movies or what I've seen in movies, over my life.
sure.
Um, this was my first time reading the actual book. The character of Renfield in the book isn't really explained. Like, it doesn't explain how he came about to be a servant of Dracula.
Yeah,
Like,
I think he's just a crazy person, and
yeah,
I think let's see what I think it's how they Dracula gets to Mina, right? So I don't think I think basically he's crazy and therefore he can recognize that Dracula is Dracula and
yeah,
everybody else would just see him as a gentleman or whatever. The only way he would have seen him though was outside his window. And so obviously Dracula speaks to him in a way that makes him believe that it's a
yeah.
spirit or whatever, a god as he was kind of doing and promises him life eternal. And
Hmm.
then that's and all just so he can get entry into the building, I think.
Yeah. And
But
so, yeah, I think in the book, I think Renfield was kind of just like a needed character. What Renfield did for me was gave Dr. Seward more character.
Yeah.
because you see a lot of Seward interacting with Renfield.
Right.
So it made that character more robust for me. I don't necessarily see Renfield in the book as a robust enough character to hold his own weight, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, he was fine. And I guess part of the reason is he was fine is because we know um through the movies kind of
Yeah,
what he's supposed to do. I am interested in I haven't seen Coppola's version in 25 years or whatever. I don't even know if I've seen it. Well, I mean, I think I've seen it once since the theater. So I know I saw it in the theater. I know that's one of the movies on our list to watch. I'm interested to see how the guy plays Renfield.
yeah,
Um, really, yeah, I think you're right. He's a character used to move the plot along, to give us an idea of Seward, and also to give us without him, there's you Dracula can't get to anybody. So
right.
um, I
I
think that's
love,
all he is. I'm
yeah,
sure there's somebody screaming at the computer if we haven't already lost everybody.
right.
That he's the most pivotal character in the whole thing,
Hmm.
and maybe he is, but he doesn't jump off the page. He really doesn't.
Yeah.
It feels like, in fact, some of the times it's like, oh, it's a welcome break from the other
Hmm.
nonsense because
Yeah.
you get a little bit of something different. Um,
And let's talk about one of my pet peeves of this book is when Mina is starting to get fed upon by Dracula. They mention, oh, she's weak and pale and tired. Why didn't they pick up on the symptoms? Like, because they noticed all the same stuff with Lucy, even though Lucy was
right.
much more severe. You
Hmm.
think after just battling a vampire or killing Lucy because you know she's a vampire, you wouldn't suspect, oh, you know what? Mina's looking a little paler than usual and she's more tired than usual and she's, you know, lethargic. Maybe we need to check something out. Like maybe we need to like do like watch her and see what's going on.
I think that's just a reflection of it being written in 1897 or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But I
but
was
yeah,
just
you're
like,
right. I mean, because immediately, what does he do? You've done your thing. Um, Actually, he had to have known, right?
yeah.
Because she does this thing where she says the connection. They hypnotize her and she talks about water, and they know he's on a boat.
Yeah, but that
And
comes after when they realize that she has been bitten. It comes
was it
after
after?
the,
Was it that late?
yeah, it comes after the scene where they walk in and Jonathan's frozen and Mina's being fed the blood from Dracula.
Okay, so we get to that point.
So
I
it's
thought
like
for
right when they first get to Seward's house.
yeah. Okay. Well, then yeah, because I'm trying to think. She does something though. Doesn't she do something before that that kind of lets them know that she's got a connection or something? I thought she did, but no, yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe at
Yeah.
that point, but is that the point when they said that she can't, they needed to, no, that's when they bring her back into the fold. They
Yeah.
immediately take her out after
Hmm.
Lucy's death. Yeah, but and that's the other thing. She does all that leg work. She does
Yeah.
all that stuff, and then they're like, okay, we'll take it from here. And then she starts to be fed upon. I'll tell you the one thing though that I think's going to be annoying, because in the movies it's always he sees his past wife in
Hmm.
her in Mina, and that's why he's so after Mina. That's not in the book at all, is it?
Nope,
Yeah.
not at
So there's
all.
absolutely there's no reason other than Dracula wants to take over England. That's the reason he's coming to England, because
Yeah.
he brings he gets, was it Harker there, and then they're doing the land grant, and he does say at one point something about getting revenge, which I assume had to do something with him being toppled or overthrown or not supported during the war with the Turks or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but unless he means just mankind, and maybe
Hmm.
because Britain would have been considered the center of the of they're the center in a way because they were the conquering empire of that time. So maybe he's saying, I'm going to come here and take over because y'all are the conquerors, so I will conquer you. Maybe that's what he means by revenge. I don't know, but
Right. Yeah.
um I don't know. Again, all I can think of is that everything I was expecting to happen because of the movies didn't happen. And then
Hmm.
there's a whole bunch of stuff that I thought was interesting that I was like, oh, this should have been in the movies. So there's some, back and forth, but you know, overall, it still is a good read. I understand why people like it.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts of the book was when Mina and Lucy are sitting with those old, I think they were like fishermen or something on
Yeah.
the bench at Hillingham. And the one guy was talking about lies on tombstones. And I'm like, wow, that's really deep because who's going to put on somebody's tombstone, this person was a jackass? They're going to be like, here lies beloved wife, mother, brother,
Right.
father. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty deep. Like you're talking about, you carrying your tombstone lies into the hereafter, you weren't a good person, but yet your tombstone says you were. I thought that was pretty cool section. It was hard to
Yeah.
read because of the
Yeah. Good
dialect.
Lord. And most people, that's like one of the first thing you'll find in any of these how to write books or clues to write better. It's always do not go over the top with dialect. It's okay to put a little bit in there so people get a feeling.
Hmm.
You couldn't read half of it. I mean, it was like it might
Yeah,
as well have been in another language.
yeah. I
So
liked how he used that to definitely distinguish the social classes.
sure.
Um, so you knew like when they were talking to the sailors, and you knew when he was talking to the zookeeper or the gypsy or whomever it was over in Galat, you knew that they were a lower class than the main characters. Um,
Yeah.
so
And you know what?
I
That
like
makes me
that.
wonder that could have been easily done. I mean, he could have done that on purpose because his reading, the people that are going to be reading this are probably going to be middle upper class
Yeah,
folk. You know what I
exactly.
mean? And then they're going to see how well they're represented or whatever. So,
Hmm. Oh yeah, for
um,
sure, because you wouldn't expect somebody of the low class to even know how to read back in
yeah,
1897,
yeah.
you
So,
know.
and then of course, what are they doing? They're kissing up to the people that are going to be their Patreons. They
I
just didn't.
loved how though every time Harker went to ask somebody something, he had to pay them. He's like,
Yeah,
"Here's some money, go get a beer." He's like, because they always kept saying, "I'm thirsty." I guess back then that was code for "give me money."
yeah, I think
It
so.
was thirsty work. I'm mighty thirsty.
Yeah, it's just like getting your case of beer,
Yeah,
handing it off, and
beer
thanking
and a
people for
pizza help me
whatever.
move. Yeah,
Yeah. So I thought the it's laid out very well.
yeah,
The characters are surprisingly modern in a way,
yeah,
which I wasn't expecting. I really did think it was going to be a little more veiled everything.
yeah.
And
I like how he made Mina a strong character.
yeah, and
Yeah,
we were complaining. I mean, you said that, why they know, and we talk about them, kind of the time period and maybe making her seem weaker than whatever. But really, she is the main heroine of the whole thing.
yeah, yeah. She wasn't just Harker's wife. She was,
Yeah.
and he did, in my mind, a good job of making her. This was 1897, so women are the fairer sex, they're the weaker sex. Um, he did a good job of portraying her as that type of woman, but
Hmm.
he also portrayed her as an intelligent, independent, strong woman who wasn't just somebody's wife.
To the point that Van Helsing can't stop talking about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he's always
um,
mentioning that she has a man's brain.
yeah, which
Um,
I think that's an hilarious statement.
yeah.
Um, but you definitely can see where they're coming from because of the time period and everything else. So
Hmm.
yeah, no, she's a surprisingly refreshing character um, for the time period. But
Yeah.
even if it was, I mean, it's just all of it was well done. It's just a little too much. There's just he could have trimmed the fat. There was just
Hmm.
too much at the end.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, Kim was telling me that there's a documentary, I think she said on Netflix, about Mina. So I'm
Hmm.
really interested to watch that to see because it's about how if there was no Mina, there would be no Dracula. Something like that. I can't remember exactly the words that Kim had used when she texted me. So I'm gonna have to check that out and see.
Which makes me feel like I must have missed something in the book because really he doesn't do much with her,
No,
Dracula. I mean, in the movies, yeah,
yeah.
she's the central reason of his existence being there. Everything he's doing is supposed to be a love story. That's the other thing I found very funny was that the movies make this into a love story. The movies romanticize everything,
Hmm.
and um, this book is not that.
It's not that, and that's one of the things I was just gonna say is, and I'm trying not to do too much comparison to the movies because we're gonna be doing
Yeah,
that on the next episode. But in the book, Dracula is my type of vampire. He's not really that
yeah,
good looking. He's evil and he's mean and he's looking out for his own best interests,
yeah,
which is different than the vampires of the movies, which I'll get into when we do that.
yeah. And the best part is also he goes from a haggard old man and as he's feeding he starts to get his strength back and becomes all that, and I think that's exactly what we should be looking at when we see these vampires. That's most of these movies don't do that,
Hmm.
where he's getting something from the feeding, not just living, but
Yeah,
he's stealing their youth, he's stealing everything from these people as
yeah,
he takes over.
yeah. But in the book, even in the book, when he has been drinking blood, he doesn't get to be like this beautiful, attractive
Yeah, I mean, even at the
vampire
end, yeah.
Lestat, you know?
Yeah, he's more like well, and that's what's funny is that he's described as a person that might be handsome from Eastern Europe.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? He's got all the facial features of that. He doesn't
yeah. Aquiline
necessarily,
nose.
yeah, everything about him. But when you read it and you see it, I can picture it, and it's
Hmm.
not an attractive man. You're right, and I think that goes into though the idea that he is a barbarian, and not only just a vampire, but he is also this to Western society. He is a
Yeah,
barbarian. He is lower than them. So
yeah,
not only in just status, but in appearance and everything. And I guess this is his Dracula's railing against that in a way. And maybe that's the revenge he's taking, is that he's trying to prove that maybe the old ways or his ways are better than the
yeah. I'm just curious because
civilized.
it was never mentioned. I want to know if when he looks younger, does he still have hair on his palms?
Yeah, I
Because
don't know.
it's never
But
mentioned, and it's like that's one thing that's always stuck out to me when he's in the castle. Harker's like he has hair on his palms. Um,
which we all know means something other than being a vampire. So
right, and I'm
um
like, what exactly does that mean? Because I didn't know that was associated with being a vampire
yeah.
or a werewolf for that matter.
Yeah, it does seem like a kind of a weird point.
Yeah,
It also feels like 1,000 years ago when I read that first part
yeah,
compared to going through the end. But overall, it's a good book because of what it's done. This is exactly what we talk
right.
about when we're doing. This is a book that launches people, authors. There's so many. I mean, there's so many Dracula books, and there's so many books about specific characters within the novel.
Oh yeah,
Um, and of course, then you go and just look at theater and movies, and there's just so much there too.
and just
Um,
vampire literature in general.
right. I mean, without Dracula, we don't. Well, maybe somebody comes, but Dracula really gives that springboard for people to get into the myths of vampires. And then when you
Hmm.
do that, then you start to see some of the other things too that kind of tie into the area. You've got probably some werewolf lore and all the gothic stuff. But yeah, this is 100%. This is like, launching 1,000 ships kind of book.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah,
definitely important. And it was way better than I thought it was going to be. And
yeah, I
it's,
thought it was it was better than I thought it was going to be too. I was like, oh gosh, this, 1897 book and
well, that's the problem. I do struggle with some of the older thing, the classics and stuff. And I know it doesn't even have to be that old. There's stuff from written in the early 1900s that I think is just, just a slog to get through
I am
that
gonna say
everybody loves, but
this was not as bad as the Wolf's Hour.
okay, yeah, no, yeah, this is better than every single book we read for the werewolf thing.
Yeah.
And and 100% I get it. I get why it it sings to certain people, and I can understand that and appreciate it. It just doesn't sing the same way to me because of, like you said, there's just too much stuff in it, and we read it too late.
Yeah.
Imagine reading this when you were, 13 or 14.
Right.
I have a feeling it would affect you way differently than it does
Hmm.
now. And then also, I mean, just imagine getting to read this before there's any movie representation. Because we have all that burned into our brain.
Yep.
So, but I think overall, I did. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, and I think that's a solid read. That's
Oh yeah.
better than whatever. So,
Hmm.
but that point is I don't. This is when I went to listen to the audio because I just had to find one to try and fill it in while I was doing something. I originally started. There's a Christopher Lee read,
Oh
and I was
wow.
like, "Oh, this is cool," And I was listening. It's really cool, but I was like, I couldn't find the section that I was reading to start with him, and then I realized, oh, it's abridged, and so they'd cut out a whole
Mm.
bunch of stuff, and I was like, oh. But now I want to go back and listen to the abridged version and see if it's better than because it's going to cut out a lot of that stuff that we're complaining about.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's kind of cool to have Christopher Lee reading it. So, but no, I ended up finding some guy that did the whole thing, and it's split into 2 videos on YouTube and stuff. And he did a decent job. Even the accent's fine, but I was tired of listening to Van Helsing's accent. Um, but yeah, really, honestly, at the end of the day, we're sold the bill of goods that Van Helsing is almost superhuman, vampire killer. But in the book, he's really not.
Yeah. No,
He,
he's
he
not.
kind of knows about everything, and
Yeah, but
but he's
does he?
not the
Because I
guy.
didn't really get the whole he knew everything about vampires,
Oh,
vampire killer.
I got the idea that he immediately knew exactly what was going on. Like, oh, this
Really?
isn't,
I
and
didn't.
I
I
have to
didn't.
get everybody up to speed so that they'll accept it. That's how I was reading it. Like
Mm.
he was constantly like, "You're not ready. You're not ready. You're not ready." And then okay, here we
Yeah,
go. Now,
I think after like his third trip back to Amsterdam is when I started thinking like, oh, he knows what's going on now. He knows it's a vampire.
it almost
Um,
feels like Gandalf, going to Minas Tirith to read about
yeah,
the ring and trying to figure everything out. He goes, "Man,
yeah,
this feels like it's something," and I'll go and investigate on my own,
yeah,
and I'll come back and get more. It just he kept going back
yeah.
more and more.
It's
So
like, will you
it's
stop
like,
going to Amsterdam? You're never gonna catch him.
yeah, and so, and I kind of wanted more. I wanted more Dracula in London.
Hmm.
I wanted more of that, more of what's he doing,
Yeah.
because they saw him on the street. We get that
Yep.
little, and Jonathan freaks out, and she sees it, and then he goes on his way. But I mean, there's all that. All that's the interesting stuff to me. So I wish
Yeah.
we would have got a little bit more of that.
I
But
mean, I'm sure
overall,
Dracula was killing
yeah, you have to
or yeah,
assume, right? He's
or
feeding
feeding
off
off of more than Lucy.
yeah, and you'd have to think. Obviously, he must have been doing. Yeah, see, I don't think he fed off of Renfield either. I
Yeah.
think he just, you know,
Yeah.
hypnotizes him or whatever, however you want to bewitches him, however you want to put it. But yeah, you would think there were other people, but we don't really get any stories other than the dog escaping. But the dog doesn't really tie into anything.
And then the only
Um,
thing we get close to that is Lucy with the kids.
yeah,
But I mean, I don't think she killed any of the kids. I think she just
no,
took
she
blood
just
from
fed
them.
on that one, I
Yeah.
think. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I wish there was more of those things and less of the other things, but it is what it is, and it's not. I mean, what are we going to do? It's a
Yeah.
classic. It's been around
Yeah.
forever. Everybody knows it. So,
Yeah.
overall, I would suggest reading it. I
Oh
think
yeah, for sure.
you're big into this kind of stuff. You're going to like it.
Yep.
I really was surprised because I remember when I tried to read it last time, I thought it was heavy-handed and
Yeah.
too much, but this time I didn't feel that way at all. I thought, oh, this is really well written, other than the few complaints I have about the accents and stuff. But it just he bridges everything really well, but the
Mm,
writing is really well. Sometimes you read that older stuff and you're like, you know,
yeah,
nobody talks that way anymore. It's difficult to picture what they're trying to say. 1,000 words to say, something you could have done in a sentence. But
yeah.
I really enjoyed. Um, I'll tell you this much: I want to go read more stuff by him. I do want
Oh
to check
yeah,
things out. So
yeah. I want to read Lair of the White Worm. Um,
yeah, for sure. I
so
like
yeah,
this
yeah,
cover,
yeah. This cover though, it makes me feel like Dracula is a pitiful character or a character to be pitied. I shouldn't say pitiful, but to be pitied because he just
which
seems
is
kind of
the
like,
Dracula we get in the movies, right?
yeah, like it doesn't give me terror feelings.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't think, and I think, well, and I think at the end of the day, if you have that love story going, then he is a pitied character because
exactly.
he's
Yeah,
stuck, But the way they wrote it, I mean, I guess he could be pitied because he can't die
yeah.
up, until he does.
2 for 1 at Walmart.
I thought that was kind of a decent, it's just a
Yeah,
plain kind of fun
yeah.
cover, but
And we by no means have pictures of every single
oh,
cover
good
of
Lord, I
Dracula
only found
because
like
yeah, of like I don't know how
I did a
many
couple.
iterations of Dracula there are out there, but it's been
These caught my eye in the time period I looked. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So.
yeah.
This one I think this one reminded me of the
The
Francis
movie.
Ford
Yeah,
Coppola, yeah. But I
yeah.
mean it's if you saw that, I think you'd be like, I gotta check out. I want to see at least look at the blurb. I
Right.
thought that was a pretty cool cover.
And see what
It's
this is all
simple,
about.
but it's also it
Effective. It's very
yeah.
effective. Yeah. This one's pretty cool. I like this one.
I
The
thought that would
penguin
be.
version.
Can
Yeah.
you imagine finding that like at a used bookstore or going through a rummage sale? I mean that just it jumps out. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
I'd like it just for the cover. I
Yeah.
think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then this one's a
Yeah, I thought
pretty
this one
cool
was like
cover.
very understated. I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that there were so many covers with just the castle.
Yeah.
So and I just, I don't know, it jumped out and I picked it, but it's not my favorite, but it's still something about it. And I guess it's probably because we know what the story's about, but I like the
Mm-hmm.
simple covers with that they were doing.
Yeah. And then this one's a pretty cool cover. This one looks
Yeah,
more
this one feels
modern.
very modern. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I threw it in there because of that. It does have that modern feel. It's got a lot of things going on. The
Yeah.
only thing I probably would change is the way they did Dracula. I don't
Yeah,
really
because he
like
looks
that.
too
Oh, I don't mind his
handsome.
face. I'm talking the word.
Oh, the
The way
word.
they got, yeah, the way they
Yeah,
got
the
that weird
face.
flame.
Yeah, I think the face should be more like
Yeah, but I mean,
hideous.
if this is a modern take, then
Mm,
everybody thinks Dracula's
it's
handsome or
handsome.
whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I
Yeah,
totally
that
get that too.
that bothers my eyes.
I wish we would have got the cover. We read the illustrated edition that you can get on Prime for free,
Yeah.
and it's got motion on some of the things. So I took some
Depending on your
video and
Kindle. Yeah.
yeah,
Because
I
I
took
was
some
reading
video and
it.
pictures.
Yeah, so I was reading it on my Kindle app on my phone. So when I launched it for the first time, even the cover was a video, like had motion, and I was like, "What
Yeah,
is going on? Like, did I get an Audible or something by mistake?"
this is
Um,
cool. That's Lucy. Right
yep,
before, I think, right when Van Helsing figured out that she was a vampire.
yep, yep. And I think this is probably when Homewood is going to kiss her,
Yeah,
and he pulls him back, and was like, "Don't do it."
yeah. Don't kiss the vampire.
Yeah, so it was really cool to see throughout. Not all of the illustrations had motion. This is a very, very, what's the word? Visceral image. This is Mina being
Yeah,
forcefully fed
Dracula's
Dracula's
blood,
blood.
which was gonna make her a vampire, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that it stood out.
Hmm.
And sometimes they had the book on top, the words are on top of the pictures, and sometimes they didn't.
It's
So,
on the side. Yeah. So
and
this
then
is
this one, does this?
Renfield.
Okay,
This
you
is
can see some motion too, some of
yeah.
the thing moving.
Yeah. This one was just a picture though. You didn't get a video of this one, but
Oh,
that's
I didn't.
Renfield
Okay,
now. Um,
maybe I'm just tripping.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
so
the
that's Renfield getting attacked when Dracula comes into the insane asylum right before he
yeah.
kills him.
I love how they're like, we're gonna explain his death that he fell out of bed.
Yeah. Well,
He broke his neck, his leg, and everything else, and he had a fall from bed. Like he was probably on like a cot that was probably like 2 feet off the ground.
right.
So here's one of the videos. So
Yeah,
you can
that's a really
see
cool one.
that's the three vampire Dracula's brides. This is when they're in
Yeah.
Galatz. I'll just play it over again. So you can see like the smoke, or maybe it's supposed to be the blue flame.
Yeah.
Um,
It's just really cool. And the eyes were glowing and everything
yeah,
about it was pretty cool.
yeah. This one, I like this one with the wolf.
Yeah. And
When
there's
the
a scene
wolf,
where Wolf gets out because I guess Dracula's there.
yeah, yeah.
And then he comes
Unfortunately,
back and
yeah,
pets the wolf and stuff.
yeah. And then this is just an illustration of Mina meeting Van Helsing. So I like
Yeah.
the portrayal of Van Helsing because this is more what from reading, that's more what I envisioned Van Helsing, because he mentions he's 70 years old
Yeah.
in the book.
Yeah. And
Um,
we're talking 70 years in 1897. That's,
right. So that's like 150 years,
it would
he's
feel
just,
like it, you would think.
yeah. And this is when they're in Galatz and they're chasing the wagon. You can see the wagon with Dracula's box on it there,
Yeah.
when he's trying to get back
It's
to
a
the
stunning,
castle.
stunning illustration. I really thought
That
that
is
one
a
was,
beautiful illustration,
yeah.
yeah. That must be Quincy with his Bowie knife. Um, and that looks like the gypsies. Um, Probably, I can't tell unless it's Jonathan and um, uh,
Seward. Did Seward go with him?
Jonathan was with Art,
Art.
yeah. And then it was Seward and Quincy were on the horses. And then there's where Lucy is sleepwalking and Mina
Yeah.
finds her on the bench.
And
Um,
that's Dracula, I guess.
yeah, I thought that was really cool because Mina describes it as seeing like this blackness, not even like a corporeal form, like. So I thought that was
Yeah.
pretty cool. And then here's the bat.
Yeah. I just thought it was a cool little picture.
Yeah,
And then I think there's a couple more at the beginning.
yeah, let me just. So this is when they're killing Lucy, and you can see like the hammers coming up kind of slowly.
Yeah.
Um, I thought that was pretty darn cool.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty cool too.
And then this last one here is that's Jonathan,
Yeah.
when they're
When
fighting.
they catch Dracula at the last location where he has the
Yep.
last, where he thinks he has the last coffins and earth from
Yeah.
home, and then they're
Yep.
waiting for him. Everything's been destroyed, and
He's
Jonathan mans up and just immediately just goes after him.
yeah. He's
Uh,
like, I am sick of your shit, Dracula.
yeah, cuts into him, and then that of course gives us the clues that Van Helsing needs to know that Dracula's trying to go home because he
Yeah.
has the gold just packed into his clothes and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting. Although, um, I think at that point there's still like what 70 pages left,
Yes.
100, and that's when I'm like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
this is a
Yeah.
little much. So
Yeah. I'm
for
like,
them not to
let's.
have anything else going with it. So
Yeah. I'm like, let's
overall,
just get this show on the road, people. Come on.
I will say it was a great way to start the classics
Hmm.
that we're going to look at over the next, couple months or whatever.
And now
Um,
I've not read a lot of Victorian literature, especially written back in the Victorian times. So I'm like, is that how people behaved? Like it seemed like, will you be my friend? Yes, I will be your friend. And now they're like, you know, bosom buddies for the rest of their lives. And, it's just like it just happened with all of them, except for Van Helsing and Seward. They had known each other previously because I think
mhm.
Van Helsing was Seward's teacher. Um, but everybody else, they're just like, will you be my friend now? We're going to be
Yeah, I
best
think so.
friends.
Like a declaration of,
Yeah.
it's an honor thing that
Yeah.
you are in with these people now. And
Yeah.
you're honor bound to support. Cause I mean, most people would be like, yeah, okay, you go fight your vampires. I'm going home.
Yeah. Right.
But these people
Especially
were all,
Quincy, the Texan, is like, oh, I'm going
which was
home.
funny because we didn't even touch on it. Those three guys are all vying for Lucy's hand on the same day.
Hmm.
And she, picks one of them, but the other two are the ones that stick by the
art
group.
one, yeah, and they're just like whatever. I'm really sad for Quincy. I really wish he would have, spoiler, would have lived. I was hoping that was going to be different than the end of the movies. Um, but I'm like, oh no,
At the
not
same time, everybody
Quincy.
can't live. He's supposed to be the greatest villain ever. He's supposed to be the
Yeah,
super, demonic power. And then if he ended up dying and nobody else did,
but he
other
didn't
than
even get
Lucy,
killed by a vampire.
that's true. But of course, back then they could have got a splinter and died from just infection and stuff.
True,
So
true.
you
Yeah,
would think more people would have died in this story. But
yeah, right. Yeah, but you're right. So there were a bunch of deaths, but there was only one death by a vampire, and that was Lucy, because Lucy's mom died, Art's father died.
I guess technically Lucy's mom died because of the vampire. She
Well,
had the
yeah,
heart attack.
yeah.
And
And then Mr. Hawkins died, which was Jonathan's boss, I guess you'd
yeah,
call
I
him.
guess like his father figure.
Yeah. So there was a lot of death. There just was only one death by vampire, unless you count Lucy's mom.
Yeah, that is kind of weird.
But I guess maybe because of the time period it was written, you couldn't get too gruesome. And
Yeah.
maybe
Oh,
it's
I could see how that was all very gruesome at the
yeah.
time. Yeah.
And maybe, let's see if I can phrase this right. Maybe Bram Stoker didn't know how a vampire would kill. Even though he made up Dracula, he's like, this is the first, technically, supposedly the first vampire, but first time he's ever written a book. It's 1897. Maybe he doesn't know how vampires should kill people because Lucy didn't really even die from a vampire. She died from the wolf version.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I don't know. Well, she didn't die really because she's reborn.
well,
So he's
yeah,
setting
yeah,
her up to reborn. So I don't think she was even he was trying to rebuild his brides, I guess,
yeah.
just in London. So,
If you picture, if I took you and put you in 1897, you know, you would be able to write a vampire book with plenty of bloody kills. Let's just say,
yeah, and I think you're right. I think they just didn't do that. But
yeah.
also, um, in his mind, he's probably thinking the vampire feeds on humans, but he's not going to go just like humans don't go around picking up chickens and ripping them apart.
Oh, we
He's
don't.
probably thinking the same thing. I don't know what goes up there, but
In New England, we do things different now.
so yeah, he's just randomly, killing cows and stuff. But
Yeah.
I think that's probably what his point was, is maybe we're beneath them. We're not
Mm,
even, because he does come up basically say that. He's like, y'all are beneath me. You're nothing. You're just food. So,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, nowadays vampires you get the 30 days a night kind of vampires, and it's a little more gruesome, and I think that is just reflection of the way our society has become a little bit more open with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yep, for
Yeah,
sure.
overall enjoyed it. I hopefully we didn't, you know, crap on it too much so we don't get a bunch of
Hate,
whatever.
hate comments,
But
hate mail. But yeah, I
but
loved
yeah,
it.
we enjoyed it.
I would recommend it to anybody who's never read it before.
Yeah, it definitely needs
Um,
to be on your
yeah.
read before you die list kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe, and I would recommend it too to like, people who've never started off with horror,
Oh
even
yeah,
maybe a younger reader, not like 10 or 5, but I mean like, 12, 13. I think it's appropriate for a
sure,
young
sure.
teenager to read.
I
So,
do too.
yeah. Yeah, definitely check it out. The version that we had with the motion, it was published by Amazon Encore, I believe. Um,
I want to say the illustrator is J.H. Williams, something like
Yeah,
that.
J.H. Williams. So we'll have, maybe put a link to it down in
Sure, I'll
the
put a
the
link.
description because I thought it was really cool and it does depend on your Kindle.
Yeah,
Like I
and
have a paper white, so it wouldn't do the motion, but you have a Fire, I think, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Um, so if you read it on your phone, like I read it on my Kindle app on my phone, so it did have the motion and the color illustrations. So yeah, it does depend on your Kindle version.
but it's a Prime thing, so you can read it for free if you're a Prime member, and I
Yeah.
think that's really cool. So
Yeah. All
okay,
right.
so now we're gonna do the not Stephen King book of the week, and I guess this is kind of a cheat since I'm one of the people in it, but it's the generator. And really, this is a Candace Nola project, and Mike Ennenbach and I and Nick Robinson, we all have stories within. The premises, there's a guy that wants to be a writer, and he can't figure it out. He sucks at it, and he meets this person, and he starts stealing ideas from her and starts writing stories under different pen names. And so the stories you'll read under certain pen names are the ones that we wrote. So there's an Ennenbach and a Butler and a Robinson pen name. And then there's also the main story that ties it all together that Candace wrote. It's a really fun way to do a multi-author story that's not just an anthology, because the
Yeah,
stories are really unique and different. So,
yeah.
and they all focus on each one of our strengths, and I guess the way we all write. All the three of us write differently. We all kind of have our own style, and I think it's evident through the reading of the generator. So, um, I think people should check it out.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very cool concept. Candace is really good about coming up with interesting concepts for books.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, definitely check that out. I know I have a copy. Um, and we'll have a link to that down in the description as well. And we will see you all on the next episode.
And we're gonna watch 5 Dracula movies. I'm gonna
Mhm.
post on the What's in the Box page tomorrow. Well, this will be out in a week, so whenever I'm gonna post it on there so you guys can see the 5 movies we're gonna watch, and you guys can watch if you want to, and then you'll know kind of what we're talking about.
Yep, we're going to do some comparisons between the movies themselves and from the book to the movies. So it should be interesting. And I'm one up on you, I think.
Yeah, I've got them downstairs. I got a couple of them sitting on a stack. We gotta start watching.
Yeah, I just was reading Dracula and I'm like, I really feel like watching Bram Stoker's Dracula right now. So I put
Yeah,
that on while I was reading. It was interesting and I'll tell you all about it next time.
sweet.